Thank you, Dr. Muhammed. I wonder whether all of you, as well as the speaker, would entertain what I would call a challenge that I'm going to pose to you. The challenge is, from the description of what I heard, if I were a traditionalist Muslim alim, not to say a more fundamentalist one, I would consider what you have described as a subversive organization or a subversive movement designed to undermine the established concept of the Ummah. And if you think about it, in a traditional doctrinal Islamic perspective, this is the case. And I would strongly urge you to, in a sense, examine this notion of the social, civic engagement as a social transformative force in a society by providing it with what I would call, for lack of a better term, an epistemological foundation. In what way is that notion of civic engagement, for example, consonant with, I'll give you an example, the early days of Islam in Mecca, subsequently the early days in Medina, subsequently the later days in Medina when the Muslims became the dominant force. No longer the Muslims, coming in with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahifat al-Medina, of saying, this is a sort of a federal system, federal state. We're going to have respect and recognition for the different ethnic communities or tribal communities, and the two Jewish tribes will be able to administer their affairs according to their rules and the others according to their rules. And I am only here as a sort of a federal arbiter of matters of a common interest. Think of how this changes after the military successes of the Muslims. Think of how this changes after the conquest of Mecca. Think of how this changes when the Muslim Ummah then is transformed into basically a succession of empires. What happened to the notion of the Ummah? Look at the civic engagement and civic responsibility that the Prophet asked his followers in the pre-Hijrah times of Mecca, and see how this has been transformed in the course of history. What is the Gülen movement trying to do? Is the Gülen movement trying to re-engender this early movement in pre-Hijrah in Mecca, in the early days of Medina, or is it simply a total detachment from the past and saying, well, let's look at the contemporary political reality of this era of world globalization, and that's how we are going to affect social change. But that social change is only going to gain credibility and is only going to gain support if you have a doctrinal foundation which is based on traditional concepts of the notion of the Ummah. Because that is the essential ligament that ties all Muslims together. No longer the Ummah as a state with a territory and a boundary, but the Ummah as a community of Muslims. And I think it is in that respect that the Gülen movement could, if it can establish that theological foundation and convince Muslims at large of it, become a worldwide movement for social reform and transformation of Muslim society. Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask a question, please, of, and I apologize if I don't pronounce your name correctly,
Suveyda?
Yes, Suveyda. How about
Suveyda.
that? I didn't want to be disrespectful. If women are neither traditionalist nor modernist, then what are they? What's the label that we use for whatever they are? And then what does this label say about the leadership of women in the Hizmet movement, not the 24% who claim leadership roles, but the 76% who do not? And what does this say about their willingness and their ability to take leadership roles? Thank you.
Thanks so much. First of all, I don't have a definition or label for this thing there. I mean, some of these, they accept some of the modern feminist, let's say, expectations. Yes, they want leadership roles, they want equal opportunities, but they define their rights within an Islamic framework. So it doesn't fit, let's say, completely modern feminist expectations. I don't have a label, I don't know, we can look for it. But in terms of their willingness to have leadership positions, yes, they are willing to do so, but in practice I talked about some obstacles like this, language barriers or headscarf problem in Turkey, or sometimes motherhood, it's challenging. This kind of things undermines their ability to do so. And if conditions change, if there are more accommodations for women, they might have more higher positions. But I also personally want to add something. There's higher positions or lower positions. If you look at the Hizmet movement, Hizmet means being a servant, right? So, and I mean, so from a, like, for example, from my perspective, there is not a lot of difference, they say, for Ikhlas to be a, let's say, cook in the movement or to be a leader. I mean, you all do all of them for the sake of God, so you just do your job. So depending on your abilities, you can do what is available for you. I don't think there's a, let's say, conscious discrimination against women within the movement, but there are these obstacles, so we can work on this to overcome these obstacles. That's my personal opinion, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you be kind enough to identify yourself? I know you're a speaker.
My name is Thomas Michel. I have a question for Suveyda and one for Gokhan. For Suveyda, you said that 2/3 of the women that you interviewed were living in Turkey and 1/3 were living in the United States. Did you find that that the answers that they gave were significantly different as groups, like the people living in Turkey and in the United States? Because that would seem to indicate that culture was a big reason for the different answers that they gave. Conversely, if they gave almost the same answers, then you would say, well, the Hizmet has kind of created a new culture where they think pretty much the same, whether they're in Turkey or the States. And to Gokhan, I want to ask, I thought you raised a really good an interesting point when you were talking about why the movement has particularly been able to be successful in predominantly Kurdish areas. And I wonder if you could give a few more words to clarify and amplify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, yes, there was some sort of difference. For example, as I discussed the gender segregation issue, those who live in the United States are less likely to support gender segregation, whereas the respondents who live in Turkey are more likely to support gender segregation. This was one of the interesting findings. In other questions, I didn't see a big difference sometimes, but in general, there is a slightly, let's say, more modernist attitude among the U.S. respondents. But it was not a big significant difference other than this gender segregation issue. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we need to go a little fast, so if you don't mind, these are two, and then we have two more, but we'll
okay.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Gokhan.
Is my microphone working? Okay. Well, I gave the Kurdish case as a sample because it's a typical sample. We have to explain how Gülen's negotiation modernity is helpful to deal with the problems in the Kurdish area, as we know that there's a serious set of problems between Turkey and Kurdistan. I think, in my opinion, along with many others, the crux of the issue is the radical modernization of Turkey, which fails to incorporate differences in Turkey, not only in terms of Kurds, Christian minorities, Druze, ethnic groups, Circassians, and so forth, but the radical modernization and its legacy in Turkey, is quite narrow to incorporate all other things. But on this point, I think Gülen is far from that, and employs a more amodern, which means that negotiating to bring that they recognize them as legitimate actors. So the actors in Kurdistan do not see the movement speaking in the name of modernity, in the name of Turkish territory, in the name of so and so forth. In that sense, I think Gülen is, and the movement is homeless, does not represent anything. So if you ask me, bringing back to the Mr. Chairman said that it is the Sayfetul Medine style of Ummah, where we all know that even the Jewish people were incorporated. So I think it's a good case to illuminate how a modern perspectives may help the movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Chair. I listen your advice for 3 people, so instead of listening. My name is Shukran Kövrak. I used to be a lawyer in Turkey, and I got my master's degree, and now I have my own business, consulting and translation services I try to provide. While I was sitting back there, one question came to my mind, but at first I think I have to explain the stages I had to go through. How modern is modernity? How modern is contemporary modernity? In here, the movement is under the microscope, but at the back, I think because I was so far away from the stage, I just had to put the modernity under the microscope. So the current modernity developed itself without any contribution of Islam, for example. Islam was the most modern idea when first it came to this earth in 1400 years ago, and it shifted the woman's role in like space age in those ages. But right now, Islam is being interrogated by being backwarded. So it's kind of ununderstandable for me, at least.
You can ask your question.
How modern is current modernity? Then maybe we have to a little bit think about it. So, for example, how modern is using the female image in every aspects of life? So, just one more sentence. For example, another question, in 80s and 90s, when first women started to have leadership models in business areas, they mostly adopted the manhood, manly behaviors, manly thinking, manly ideas. They drive like men, they act like men. But in the movement, I see...
Can we have the answer?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, this sort of critique that you have made is being made by many Muslim reformers, or like against those who blame Islam for women's oppression, and they turn away. Okay, then how modern is the modern world? Okay, they don't accommodate women's needs, and then this motherhood, that stuff. So it's kind of, let's say, or women's being used as a sexual object, whatever. There's these sort of critiques. So I think it's hard to define modernity. I mean, if you look at the Turkish experience of modernity, the ideal modern woman is the one who works outside, who is publicly visible, and at the same time dutiful at home. You know, she's a mother, so she's supposed to fulfill lots of jobs. And there was one paper about this, talking about role conflicts and how hard it is to do this superwoman woman syndrome, to do both of them at the same time. So I do agree, to some extent I agree with those. I mean, there needs to be more accommodation, and I mean, whether modernity is really, let's say, helping women or pushing them like more, I don't know.
As you say, whatever is available for women.
Thank you.